in the sub 200cc category, which is filled to the brim with sporty commuters, Kawasaki have decided to tread a different path, take a leaf out of Royal Enfield's book and launch a retro commuter in the guise of the W175. A motorcycle which has been quite successful in the other Asian and Latin American markets, but this Indian variant is slightly different, being the first motorcycle to be built by Kawasaki independently in India from the ground up. And some of the biggest changes include fuel injection, you get single channel ABS, you get a smaller 12-litre tank, and the weight has gone up by about 10 kgs. And what you see right here is the latest iteration, which comes in this new paint scheme and alloy wheels, while being about 12,000 rupees cheaper than the original W175, which was launched last year, which came with spoke wheels. So, with a more palatable price tag of 1.35 lakhs, can the W175 make its mark in the Indian market? Let's go and find out. So the idea here was to keep things as simple as possible. So even if you look at the engine, it's quite basic. It's a 177cc air-cooled SOHC 2-valve engine, makes a modest 13 PS and 13.2 Newton meters of torque. So to put things into perspective, if you compare this with the other sportier 160cc commuters like the Adithya 160 or the N160, they actually make more power, despite the cubic capacity advantage that this one enjoys. But rather than chasing more power or more top end, Kawasaki were mainly focusing on rideability, which is befitting of a classic, which is where the W175 does really well. So you have really strong low and mid-range, which means you can actually ride this in a gear or two higher, and still whenever you get on the throttle, the engine feels quite responsive, up to 85 kilometers an hour. I mean, if you really want to push it, it will go up to 100, 105 kilometers an hour. But there, the engine feels quite strained. It will take forever to get to that point. And yeah, it will be quite clear that it doesn't have the top end. That was not the intention of this motorcycle. But below 85, the other thing which you will really appreciate is also the refinement, because there are barely any vibrations on the handlebar, even though it doesn't even get bar end weights, which is amazing. Also, the 5-speed transmission so far has worked really well, very precise. The clutch is nice and light to operate. So yeah, for your city commutes and your lazy strolls, the W175 would make for a really good companion. The other thing I'm noticing, I'm rather surprised with, is the braking performance. Surprised because this gets a drum brake at the back and you have pretty thin tires, but in terms of stopping performance, this is actually quite good, especially for the kind of speeds that you would be doing. And that also has a lot to do with its light 135 kg curve weight. Also here in the corners, man, it's actually doing quite well despite the thin tires. It is very agile because it's really light, but at the same time when you're taking the corners, it actually feels quite sure-footed. But yeah, as you can see from my voice, I had to pump up the preload to the maximum setting to improve the ride quality on these bumpy surfaces, because I feel the rear shock is definitely underdamped to tackle roads like this. In fact, that's the one thing that I feel that the W175 can improve, its comfort. So even though it has nice and upright ergonomics, you have a seat which is flat and wide both for the rider and the pillion. Even the seat height for that matter is very approachable at 786 millimeters. The seat itself can do with a little more padding, because even after short rides I felt my butt going numb. So yeah, even though this has a 12-litre tank, which is good enough to extract a fuel range of almost 500 odd kilometers, I still would not recommend the W175 for touring. So despite the reduction in price, I think the Kawasaki W175 has its work cut out, because it's more expensive, less equipped and less powerful compared to its sporty competitors. And even though it scores really high on the retro charm, given the simplicity of the design and the engine, I think the one thing which is really working against it is its diminutive size. I mean, we're talking about an Indian market which is obsessed with big motorcycles, where a motorcycle as good and as competitively priced as the Triumph Speed 400 is failing to make its mark. So I'm not sure if Japanese reliability and refinement alone is going to be enough to convince what is predominantly a Royal Enfield audience to give this motorcycle a shot.